Hi, everyone. Welcome to class 12. This class will be on influencing social interaction with level design and a bunch of other things. Lecture for this week is a little bit weird because there's so much to cover in lecture that I ended up adding the lecture topics as readings. So now there's nothing to cover in lecture because I gave you a bunch of readings. But despite the fact that you'll have read about this and that we're going to talk about it in class, I do still want to give a high-level overview of these topics. So this should be a pretty short lecture, and I'll talk a little bit in it about the structure of the rest of the class. So let's see here. There we go. So from the syllabus, Architectural Approach to Level Design, Chapter 12, talking about influencing social interaction with level design. That's some pretty fascinating stuff, a little theoretical because it's all social sciencey, but important. Rational game design, which you could teach a whole level design class just on learning and applying those techniques. So that Gama Sutra article, make sure you read it. It's super important. Again, that could be a whole level design class just following that practice. If you're looking to be a practical level designer making levels in your career, you're going to want to understand that material very well. Especially if you want to reliably create levels that work and save lots of pain and agony late in the development process, rational level design is your friend. And then Pattern Language for Game Design, Chapter 13, which is applying the Alexander's 15 properties that we've been looking at for a while now to all different aspects of game design. So I'll talk a little bit about both of those. And then in class, you're going to look at finding those 15 properties in your existing design, and then seeing if there are properties that aren't in your existing design that you would like there to be, and then finding ways to make that happen. You're going to have this coming week to finish up your project, and then it will be the final class where we have lecture and meeting. If you are satisfied with and confident in your project, then that may be your last class. The Monday following that, not next Monday, but the following Monday, is the 19th, and that is actually the last scheduled class. That class, you'll be able to turn in your final projects if you choose not to turn them in next week. If you need an extra week of development time to polish them, if you want to take advantage of having a dedicated team to work on something, bring it up to portfolio level, just make sure that you're going to get the grade that you think you deserve. You'll be able to present on the 19th. On the 19th, I will also be inviting Thursday's class, who wouldn't have class on that week, to turn in their final projects. So that class, for however many people want to take advantage of the extra time, we'll be looking at those projects and critiquing them. I should also warn that you will have an assignment next week for your final, and your final is going to be evaluating the project from a different group. So you'll want to make sure that your design document that you're putting into each of your readings and assignments documents, you also create a new document just for that. And that document will be shared with one of the other groups, and that group is going to evaluate your work. They will be graded on their evaluation. You will be graded on your evaluation of a different group's work. And I will be looking at those evaluations as well as your project to assign you your final grade. So there is a final, and it's analyzing how another group applied everything you learned in this class and how they created and applied patterns, and whether or not you have a critique of that. Those critiques you will have the option to share with the respective groups. I encourage you to do that, like be open with your critique and be willing to accept other groups' critiques. You don't have to share them, but I encourage you to. It is to everyone's benefit to look critically at your work. Anyway, so that's what's coming up and what we're doing this week. So just to step through these topics really quickly in a little bit of detail to get you ready for the class. So the bonus topic of rational level design as you'll know if you've read the Gama Sutra article. If you haven't read the Gama Sutra article, pause, go read it. Powerful, worthwhile. But basically, it's about understanding the mechanics of your game design before you start designing levels for your game. So that's saying figure out how high a character is going to be able to jump before you start building levels that have places that they should jump in them, right? Can they jump 1 game unit in distance from standing still? Can they jump 1.5 game units from standing still? If they're running, does that increase the amount that they can jump? If their run speed is variable, does that variably increase the amount that they can jump? How high can they jump from running or standing still? How far can they jump if they're on a 10% incline or a 20% incline? Or if they're on a 45% decline, how far do they go? Knowing the answers to say all of those things. Can they climb? How fast can they climb? Can they fall? How much damage do they take if they fall? All of those kind of mechanical things. How fast can they turn? Are there floor sliding physics? Anything like that. Knowing those mechanics and how they work before you start building the level lets you build the level appropriately. So the examples given in the article are mostly about jumping, but these things apply to everything. How much damage weapons do, what weapon trajectories are, how powerful auto aim is. Depending on how powerful the auto aim is, may determine what the enemy size is, how far you choose to place enemies away from the player. If you are going to be placing them far away from the player, then you need to have levels that are large enough to allow that distance. If you aren't going to be, then having vast open levels, is that going to feel reasonable if all the enemies are only attackable when they get close to the player? So all of those kind of things, knowing them ahead of time will help you. Rational level design is a way to specifically understand all of those things before you start designing. To how to build sandbox test environments that let you test jumping in a repeatable way. We talk about this in Foundations of Game Design and in Rapid Idea Prototyping, that you should prototype your mechanics, right? And in physical games, that's pretty easy. Like build a simple prototype that just tests movement, test your movement before you, whatever that mechanic is, rolling dice or, whatever your physical game mechanic is. Test that before you add on other systems, build up your system slowly. But in digital design, we often tend to say, well, there's going to be all of these mechanics and they're going to take months to implement. So we're just going to start building levels now in parallel with that. And it'll be great. We'll get our mechanics in place, we'll add them into our levels, and it's going to be awesome. And then they don't match, and you either have to change your mechanics to something less awesome, or you have to rebuild all of your levels to the appropriate scale and challenge that your mechanics facilitate. Terrible plan. So how do you do that kind of testing that's easy physically in a digital environment? The answer is rational level design. Use the techniques that are described in the article. And I'm not going to describe the article in so much detail that you don't have to read it, because there's too much detail for me to describe. Thus, I assign it as reading for you to go and read. So go read that, and we will talk about it in class. I'll ask some specific questions, so make sure you've paid attention. 15 fundamental properties of wholeness in game design. So we've had some time thinking about these properties. One thing that I made sure to take time to do when I wrote this chapter was to talk about the nameless quality that Alexander describes, because we say that the 15 properties help make good spaces, right? That make spaces that we like. Well, what do we mean by good spaces? And it's so subjective, right? What are they for? What's a good space in one circumstance may not be in another. So here are the list of adjectives that Alexander uses to describe the nameless quality, right? He says it doesn't have a name, but it makes things feel alive and whole and eternal and comfortable and free and exact and egoless, that they're not simply beautiful, that they're not only fit for their purpose, and that they're slightly bitter. I love that one. But all of those things, like, that's really abstract. What do you mean in terms of game design? So I then go through and talk about what those things mean in a practical sense in terms of your level design. All of these slides are in the lecture, so are in the slide deck. So when I'm asking you these questions, refer back to them. Don't just quote this, but use it to remind yourself and talk extemporaneously on each of these things, citing examples from your gaming experience. So there's 2 slides that I go through all of those properties. All of these things are also in the book. This is a pretty much a port of what's in the book to the slides for your convenience, because I think this is really important stuff. It's theoretical, it's abstract, it's also understanding it and internalizing it will make you a better designer. So then we get on to the 15 fundamental properties of wholeness. You've now been exposed to those from 3 different sources, but I'm going to be asking you specifically about how these things apply to games. I would like you to not just quote back my examples at me. That's fine. I thought about those examples. I think they're decent examples. I would like you to cite examples from your gaming experience. I want you to be able to recognize these things in games that you have played. Not going to say, well, you said blah, blah, blah. Yes, I know what I said. Can you cite an example of this? And if you can't, we can work through that together. I'm not going to fail the class because you can't do this, but think about it ahead of time. As you're reading this part of the article, part of the book, be thinking about your own examples, right? Add that to your notes for each of them. And then when I call on you, you'll be able to cite your own examples and I'll be impressed. So there's that. Again, I go through here each of those different levels of examples with lovely illustrations. All of these illustrations, incidentally, are by Christopher Totten, who wrote the main architecture book that you're reading. So he worked with me to create all of these awesome illustrations. And to match style with Jason Weiser, who created the other pattern illustrations in the book to create a consistent art style and visual language. So that was a fun collaboration. You'll get to do a lot of that in game design in general. So again, decent examples of all of these different things, and you want to be looking for your own examples to cite when I call on you. So the void, inner calm, and not separateness. All right, so then we'll do a show and tell. You're going to go through and present the current state of your projects. Gray boxing, if you've gotten any further than that, which you don't need to have, right? But you should have your level roughed out, your mechanics nailed down, what you're intending to do. So we're going to go over all of that. And I will try, if we have time, to call on other teams to provide a little bit of feedback for each of your levels rather than me just critiquing them. I'll try to call someone from each team to say what they think about it. Accept feedback from your peers, right? You're all working on the same ideas and grappling with these concepts and how to apply them. In the same way that pattern design is about using your own experience to find patterns and teach yourself game design, your peers are your best resource. You can teach each other game design, ask each other difficult questions. Don't be mad at people when they question your work, right? Be grateful to them that they're giving you a chance to articulate your ideas clearly, or to recognize that you're missing things, because you're game design students, you're missing things. You're going to continue missing things for all of your career. And the only way you're going to end up making games that don't miss those things, that fill in your blind spots, is to have a diverse set of peers that you turn to for design evaluation and review, working on diverse teams, working together with people and being humble. So good chance to practice that. We'll do that a little bit in class. All right. And then we'll go into the readings and lecture discussion. This gives you a sense of what I'm going to ask questions about. Again, I'm going to ask detailed questions of a few people on rational level design. So, be ready to answer a question about any part of that article. Then we'll do exercises. You're going to identify what of the 15 properties exist within your current game design. what things are you doing that you're like, oh, that's creating a sense of scale in my level, or that's echoes between the mechanic and the level design, or between two different mechanics I have, or the shape of the enemies and the shape of the geometry, whatever. And then there is the fifth challenge exercise. So if you have fallen behind or you want to get a little bit of extra credit, this is about picking a property that you noticed in your scene that was not associated with a pattern that already exists, right? So you've created or you've made use of one of the 15 properties, but not because of a pattern that you're using, just because of instinct, or the fact that you were trying to create a beautiful level, or an effective level. You did this thing. There's not a pattern associated with it. This exercise is about finding that pattern and articulating it that you're already using. So general pattern exercise, take an hour or so to do that on your own, enter it into the library, and submit that exercise in Canvas for extra credit. Again, advanced exercise, the grad students have to do that. You don't, but it's good for you. And then exercise 30 is going to be applying the 15 properties to your existing design, which is to say you aren't going to have used all 15 of them in all likelihood in your project. So if there are ones you aren't using, if you aren't making use of the void or inner calm or local symmetries in your level, but you think you could be, think about how you would do that. You may not actually be able to implement those changes at this point, but think about how you would implement them if you can, and describe whether or not you did and why in your design document. Details are on the slide, so refer to that during class. Project assignment for this week. You're going to complete your in-engine implementation either for next week, or if you decide you need more time, for the following week. You will be exchanging your design documents next week, regardless of whether or not you're continuing your work, for people to work on their finals. So you'll be able to continue your final project. I'll be reviewing that final project, but the students who are reviewing your documentation for their final, right? Their review doesn't affect your grade. Their review and understanding affects their grade. So don't worry if yours isn't complete, as long as it's complete enough for them to comment on. That will be your homework for next week, regardless of whether or not you're continuing work on your project. Again, I'll go over this all again in class, but it's a lot, so I thought I would say it here. So you'll have had 4 weeks for this project. I expect it to be a lot better designed, to be more polished, to be more thoughtful than your previous ones. If it is gray boxed, I do still expect lighting, and I expect the geometry to be of a reasonable level of sophistication. If you are using any imported assets, I expect a detailed gray box that matches up with your final implementation, not a crude gray box layout and then a intensely detailed level that is all just assets that you pulled in, right? You need to be replacing assets in your gray box with things of more detail, not using snap together pieces and then reverse engineering a gray box or something. That's tacky, and I'll know. So you should be actually building the level in Unity using your own means, and then only using assets as needed to raise the visual level of quality, not to use them as a crutch. So as little as possible. We'll talk about them in class next week. For those people who are, for everyone, we'll go over where they are next week. And then for some people, that may be what you're turning in. You may decide based on what the class critique and review of your level is that you need to put in that little bit of extra time and then present a final time on the 19th. So there we go. Again, your assignments, writing a paragraph response to the readings, and then completing, which is, I think, probably the final chapter. And then writing a paragraph response. Yeah, sorry, I already said that. And then you're going to be completing your final project or bringing it to a level that will look at it and deciding if you want to spend an extra week on it. And then that says challenge 6 or 7. It should actually say challenge 5. So you'll be completing challenge 5 if you would like. I actually don't say project assignment here, but you need to do those exercises as well and put them into your assignments document. All right, that is class. I look forward to seeing you on Monday. Have fun with this project. This is, the culmination of a lot of hard work for you, and I'm really excited to see what you all come up with. All right, thank you so much.